Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're here up north and we got a spicy one for you. A Reed Runner Frogs. Got Sam Larsen with me. My name's Joe Ohman. We're going to talk about how we secured the bag at the Battle of the Bassheads this year.
So, way up north here in Minnesota, we fish frogs a ton. Basically from opener till when I stop fishing, I have a frog tied up on deck. So it's something that we're really passionate about. And when we started to design the Reed Runner Frog, there was a few things that were really important to us that we really wanted to accomplish with it. The number one being its ease to work through the heavy cover. We fish a lot of reeds, rice, and pads. You want that hook to sit really tight to the body, okay? So that's going to allow you to get it in there and slip it past without constantly being hung up on the reeds or dragging a little bit of rice. So that's super important to us. On top of that, we made sure the quality of the hook was super good. We're fishing heavy gear, 65-pound braid. I want to be able to pull on it as hard as I can. A lot of frogs I've seen that even the hook starts to open up a little bit after a lot of fishing. This one stays tight, so I know it's super duper strong. Another thing is the walkability of it. So when fishing these reeds and a little bit more open water areas, you want that walking action. So we spent a ton of time with the balance of this frog to get it right, so you didn't have to trim the tails, you didn't have to do weird things. Right out of the package it walks super easy, and that's all of how it sits in the water based on the internal weighting. And then finally, a huge thing for us, and it was huge in the tournament, is the softness of this body. It's super soft. You don't need to boil them in water like some guys do. During the tournament, we lost one fish on it, which for frog fishing and heavy rice, that's super good odds. In my book, you know, only losing one fish is good, and I think it's just because when those fish eat it, they get pinned because that body gets out of the way because it's nice and soft. So we're really happy about it. We got it in a bunch of different colors and whatnot. We also have a popping version. Me and Joey during the tournament were using the walking version. Just up north here, fishing the heavy cover and covering water, it's nice to have that pointed nose so we can work through the stuff, work it fast. In the springtime, I really like using the popping frog when the fish are more consolidated into small areas. You can work it slow and the cover's not as good. But I know one of our guys, Noah Schultz, just did really well, racking up almost 30 pounds in a tournament on the popping frog.
So, one of the important pieces of frogging and what we're in here, I mean, if you look around us, it's dirty, man. It is dirty and sloppy. We got rice, we got pads, we got some pencil reeds. It's thick and it's heavy. And once you pile drive that fish off of the bite, you got to be ready to fight them out of there. And, you know, it may seem like overkill to some people, but when you're in here, like, you need to be prepared. So we got a 7.6 Elliott Identity flipping frog. It's a heavy rod. This thing is meaty. You have no problem wenching them out. And paired with that, we got a Lew's Super Duty. Now this is a 300 size bait casting reel, but I tell you what, like, when you actually hook a fish in there, you're gonna thank yourself. This thing has all the power and more that you need. It may seem like overkill, but when you're actually in that moment, why not?
The Elliots are super nice rods, but if you're a tinkerer like me, I like to build a lot of my rods too. So I'm using a Mudhole 885, which is a heavy, and then I also have a Mudhole 936. Really nice blank. I extend the 885 out to 7'9". I think that length is really important. For when you need to bomb that long cast out there, you know, in this heavy stuff, you can't always get the boat as close as you'd want it to. So sometimes if you're trying to hit that pocket up on shore, you really got to bomb a cast. But another thing I like about the long rod is when you drill into them, you can get that rod tip up high, keeping that fish up on the surface. Frog fishing, you want to keep them as high to the surface as you can, so you can get them up over that cover and start to skate them in. You don't want to let them start dogging down in that, because that's when you run into problems. Reel wise, I'm rocking the Lew's BB1. It's my new favorite frogging reel. Not as big as the Super Duty, but still has a massive spool on it. We're running 65-pound braid just because of how heavy and how hard we want to crank on these fish. And with 65-pound braid, if you have a smaller spool, sometimes you can't fit even a long cast on it. This BB1, I can still put a good amount of backing on it, and I can fit about 2 casts worth of line on it, which is what I like to do, just in case you have problems tournament day and you need to, you know, hit a zebra mussel on a reed and you need to cut off some line. it's plenty, you never have to worry about it. So super good setup, but yeah, you need the horsepower in this thick stuff to get these fish out of here.
It may look dead and dying in here, but at the end of the year, this vegetation is the strongest it's been all year. I mean, you'd be surprised. Sometimes you get stuck in it and you feel like you can't even get it out.
Yeah.
So,
anything that was standing up is now laying down or under the water, so those fish are bearing into it. You need that strong setup to rip them out of there.
You come prepared for battle. Are we gonna get to see a rice freak? Oh, there we go, kids. So Sam's showing you the importance of a heavy rod here. Split him in there, just a little.
Not a big one, but you can see that's the stuff you got to crank them out on. Even that little fish I was wrenching on to get out, but
if you want to come up north in the fall, you got to get dirty sometimes. Sam's getting dirty in there.
It's fish with the side of rice, or frogs with the side of rice. So the stuff we're looking for pretty much all the time, but especially in the tournament, was these thicker patches of rice. So you can see it's not whimsy, there's thicker patches, but you want to target the holes in the pockets inside these thicker patches. So you want to be able to cast that frog into an area that you're going to be able to walk it. A lot of times what we find is good is if you find pads inside the rice, just like we're here. So you'll have thick edges of rice with a little bit of pad scattered in between that. And then just casting that frog out and walking it through those areas is really key.
So part of that now is being able to make accurate casts. You know, we've got holes in the rice all over the place here, but if you can't pinpoint it into one of those pockets, you might as well just go home at that point. Now, we weighted this frog so that not only it's easy to walk, but it's also easy to cast. So you can actually throw a dart right into the pocket that you want. You hit that pocket, twitch, twitch, boom, baby.
So when we talk about walking the frog, what we're doing is just imparting action from the rod tip. So you're just gonna make your cast out there and then just give little quick taps with the rod. During the tournament, and it kind of depends on how the fish are eating it. Sometimes they like it working a little faster, so reeling it faster, really twitching it, and sometimes it's a little slower. I like twitch, 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 and then just pause it for a second, especially when you come into those pockets that Joey was just talking about. Twitch, 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 pause, and just gives that fish an extra second to eat it good. You know, like you struggling to get through this rice, the fish are kind of in the same situation. It's not the ideal area for them to eat, so sometimes you have to help them get it into that area. And another thing is the hook set on these frogs. So you want to give them a second, but it's also important to try to determine if they have it or not. And that really just comes from experience. The sound is a good indication of that. Obviously the visuals, when you're fishing a frog, you always want to be looking at the frog. But what I like to do is if they eat it and you see them eat it, give them just like a 1 second count and just drill them as hard as you can. Like I said, in that hook set, pulling up across to try to get that fish to the surface and then just winching it as hard as you can. A lot of times they'll roll and pop on it. And when that happens and you see that they didn't get it, just keep the frog there and twitch it a few times. Try to keep it moving a little bit so they don't get too good of a look at it. But a good percentage of the time, that fish is going to come back. Also have your partner tell your partner, hey, I got one. Every time that we had one boil, me or Joey are cranking in to try to get that second cast in there. It doesn't matter who's catching it. We're just trying to get the fish. In shallow water, we really like to throw a frog right back in on them. But if you're in a little deeper water, stuff around 2-3 feet, a jig can be really effective too. So having a jungle jig rigged up on deck that you can throw it back in there, that fish kind of circles back and it has a little bit more time to see it. You can kind of get away with hanging that jungle jig in one spot a little bit longer than the frog. But it's always important to cast back. Cast back at least twice on every blow up you get, because it'll definitely pay off for you. Can I do it?
Follow it up. You got a little blow up and misses. Sam's going to throw back at it here and see if we can get him to go again. Throwbacks are a key.
Hit him again, Joey.
And potentially coming through from a different angle, a couple different angles.
Especially in that shallow water, that You fish in the spring and the water's clear and the sun's high, you realize how far those fish will swim after they hit a frog. Sometimes they go 10 feet to left or right. So it's another important thing as you're watching your bait to try to see what direction that fish was swimming as you hit the frog. And I always try to lay one in right on kind of the bullseye first, but then start fanning off to that direction you thought he was swimming. And we've had fish eat 10 feet away from where the first blow up was. So,
and unfortunately, today, he didn't want to go again. You can't win them all, but you can sure try.
So whenever possible, I like to be frogging off the left side of the boat as a right-hander. And the reason I do that is because when I swing on one, I feel like I get a better hook set swinging across the bow. Also, I'm not swinging into my partner that way, so it's what I prefer. Another thing about that is it more applies to when you're fishing in deeper water, so either when the fish are lined up more on the edge of the rice or in the reeds. In theory, you should be covering the water as you go, so all the fresh fish should be off the bow of the boat. And when they hit the frog, they should be coming from the bow, swimming to the stern. So when they eat it, they're swimming that way, and then you're setting forward, which is setting the hook in the opposite direction they're swimming. And I think it just helps you get a little better hook. Like I said, it's not the Bible. When you're fishing this stuff, you got to be willing to go off either side of the boat. But if you can, I like to position myself in the best possible way to get that fish to the boat if it eats.
So, color is a pretty important part of running a frog. Typically we like going with dark colors, the blacks. We got overcast, it creates a better silhouette under the water. We got a couple options of those. We've got a blackbird frog, which is basically straight black with some red and yellow on the sides, trying to imitate a red-winged blackbird. We got another color in this loon. Now, baby loons, you can argue about it all you want. Who knows if they eat them, if they don't. But at the end of the day, that black silhouette and the white on top, I can see it from a distance. The fish can see the silhouette. Black's an all-around good one. We've got some whites in there also. Got some more glittery patterns in a bluegill and a perch that would more so, obviously imitate bait fish that would be hanging around. When you're frogging, you're not only trying to imitate a frog. You've got mammals, you've got reptiles, you've got other fish like the panfish that we talked about before. It could be anything. So depending on where you are, what time of year it is, the reed running frog's got a color to imitate all of it. And part of that is for your own enjoyment, what you have confidence in, but you can really dial in matching the hatch. When you got insane colors like loon, you got a painted turtle, the bluegill's a great color, especially when they're on bait more in pencil reeds like we have over here. You just got an option of everything. Realistically, at the end of the day, the key is putting the frog in the right place with the right color and the right action that looks natural to them, so that they think they're actually eating one of their prey species, whatever it may be. One of the best things about fishing a frog is you don't have to think that hard about it. And if you go pick yourself up a reed runner frog and you go out in a 17-foot boat like this, we got nothing fancy here. We got a trolling motor, some big rods, and some frogs, and we're gonna have a freaking blast. There's no doubt about that. All you need is your eyes and a frog.
The good part about a frog too is in the upper Midwest, it's a great numbers bait, but it's also a super good big fish bait. I mean, out of all the fish we catch in a year, the majority of the 5-pounders we catch, I would say, are on frogs. And I think because those big fish learn that eating something off the surface is going to be a really easy, rewarding meal that gives them a lot of calories. So I think those big fish really tune into those topwater presentations, but it's also a really good numbers presentation too.
If you want to catch some giants and have a ton of fun, go get yourself some reed runner frogs.